Gold is born in the heart of dying stars. It is a finite element, rare by the very laws of physics. But a diamond is just a reorganization. It is common carbon, the same stuff in your pencil, the same stuff in a lump of coal squeezed by the weight of the world. There are quadrillions of tons of diamonds buried beneath the Earth's crust. They aren't rare. They are so abundant that they are used on the tips of drill bits to chew through pavement. But the gilded truth is that a diamond's value isn't found in the earth. It is manufactured in a boardroom. Before 1870, if you owned a diamond, you were likely a king or a sultan. They were found in the riverbeds of India and the jungles of Brazil, one pebble at a time. They were truly scarce. And then the world broke. 19th century. South Africa. A 15-year-old boy named Erasmus Jacobs finds a pretty pebble on his father's farm. He thinks it's a toy. It was actually a 21-carat diamond. Within months, the Orange River was crawling with 50,000 miners. They weren't finding pebbles, they were finding mountains. The scarcity that had propped up the diamond's value for 1,000 years vanished in a single summer. Diamonds were being pulled out of the ground by the bucketful. The British financiers watching from London were terrified. They realized that if this supply hit the market, a diamond ring would soon cost the same as a silver spoon. The diamond was about to become a common rock. Unless they could stop the world from seeing the truth, enter Cecil Rhodes, a man who understood that a monopoly is more powerful than a mine. He didn't just want to find diamonds, he wanted to own the very access to them. Between 1880 and 1888, Rhodes used Rothschild's money to systematically buy out every single claim holder in the Kimberley mine. He formed De Beers Consolidated Mines. It wasn't just a company, it was a syndicate. Rhodes understood the gilded truth to keep prices high. You don't need a better product, you need a single throat to choke. De Beers became the central selling organization. They told every other mine in the world, sell to us at our price, or we will flood the market and destroy you. They became the valve. They controlled every stone that touched a jeweler's velvet pad. But the syndicate had a flaw. They could control the supply, but they couldn't control the human heart. They had the rocks, but they needed to find a way to make people desperate to buy them. They needed to turn a common mineral into a mandatory proof of love. Up next, the manufactured desire. By 1938, the De Beers Syndicate was sitting on a mountain of carbon and a valley of debt. The Great Depression hadn't just destroyed wallets, it had destroyed the diamond myth. Diamonds were seen as the gaudy relics of a dead aristocracy. Sales were plummeting. The gilded truth was that if things didn't change, the cartel would have to liquidate their stockpiles, revealing to the world that diamonds were as common as sea salt. Harry Oppenheimer, the new head of De Beers, flew to New York. He didn't meet with miners. He met with psychologists and admen. He went to NWIR, the agency that had successfully sold everything from cigarettes to war bonds. He gave them a simple, impossible mandate: change the mind of the world. NWIR didn't just run ads, they conducted social engineering. They realized that you couldn't sell a diamond on price because diamonds have no intrinsic value. You had to sell it on psychology. They sent agents to high schools across America. They gave lectures to young girls on the romance of the stone. They seeded stories in movie magazines about film stars proposing with massive rocks. They were building a social necessity. They wanted every woman to feel that a wedding without a diamond was a gilded failure. And they wanted every man to feel that the size of the rock was the only accurate measure of his success as a provider. They weren't selling jewelry, they were selling insecurity. 1947. A copywriter named Frances Geraghty was working late. She was exhausted. She scribbled 4 words on a pad before going to bed. A diamond is forever. It is considered the most successful advertising slogan of all time. Why? Because it solved De Beers' biggest problem, the resale market. If a diamond is forever, you never sell it. You keep it until you die. You pass it down. This ensured that the millions of diamonds already in the hands of the public would never return to the market to compete with De Beers' new supply. It turned a liquid asset into a sentimental heirloom. It trapped the consumer in a one-way transaction. Once the forever myth was anchored, De Beers needed to maximize the gilded profit. In the 1950s, they launched a campaign in Japan, a country with almost no tradition of diamond engagement rings. Within a generation, 60% of Japanese brides wore them. They invented the 2-month salary rule. It wasn't based on tradition. It wasn't based on theology. It was based on a calculated quota to extract the maximum amount of wealth from the middle class. They told the American man, How else can 2 months' salary last forever? It was a brilliant gilded trap. If you spent less, you were cheap. If you spent more, you were a king. De Beers had successfully turned a $0 rock into a mandatory tax on the human heart. Up next, the Siberian leak. 1955. The Soviet Union was locked in a Cold War with the West. But deep in the Yakutsk region of Siberia, they found a weapon more powerful than a nuclear warhead. They found a pipe of Kimberley, the mere mine. The Soviets hadn't just found a mine, they had found a geyser. Diamonds were pouring out of the permafrost by the millions. But there was a gilded truth that terrified the Kremlin. Diamonds are only valuable if someone buys them. And the only people with the money to buy them were the capitalist pigs in the West. De Beers was panicking. If the USSR dumped their millions of Siberian diamonds onto the open market, the scarcity myth would shatter in a single afternoon. The price would plummet to the cost of industrial gravel. In a move that defines gilded realpolitik, the heads of De Beers flew to Moscow. In a secret boardroom, beneath the portraits of Lenin and Stalin, the ultimate capitalist cartel and the ultimate communist empire shook hands. The deal: De Beers would buy every single diamond the Soviet Union produced, every stone, every year, no matter the cost. They would act as the single throat to choke for Soviet production, ensuring that the Siberian supply never reached the public directly. The Cold War stopped at the diamond's edge. But there was a catch. The mere mine didn't produce large, hero stones. It produced melee diamonds, tiny, grid-sized rocks. De Beers was now paying the Soviets billions of dollars for millions of tiny stones that no one wanted. Their vaults in London were overflowing with Siberian industrial waste. If they couldn't sell them, the cartel would drown in its own inventory. This is the gilded truth of the industry. When a monopoly has too much of a bad product, they don't lower the price, they change the truth. De Beers went back to the ad man at NWI. Their mission: make small feel sophisticated. They invented the eternity ring. They didn't market it to young brides. They marketed it to husbands who had been married for 10 years. The message: she's been a good wife, she's raised the children. Now, show her your love is eternal, with a ring of 1,000 tiny diamonds. It was a masterpiece of gilded inventory management. They successfully convinced the world that the Soviet Union's low-grade overflow was actually a premium symbol of mature love. By the 1970s, the eternity ring was a global phenomenon. De Beers had turned a Cold War threat into a multi-billion-dollar profit center. But while the cartel was busy managing the Soviets, a new shadow was forming in the jungles of Africa. A shadow that would prove that forever had a blood red cost. Up next, the blood in the eyes. For a century, De Beers had maintained a gilded peace. They were the central nervous system of the diamond world. But in the 1990s, the nervous system began to fail. New, massive mines were discovered in Canada and Australia. These mine owners didn't want to play by the Syndicate's rules. They didn't want to be controlled. As the De Beers monopoly dropped from 90% to 60%, the valves they used to control the world's supply began to leak. Diamonds were no longer coming through the front door of the London Syndicate. They were coming through the back door of civil wars. In Sierra Leone and Angola, diamonds became a currency for chaos. Rebel groups realized that a pocketful of $0 rocks could buy a crate of AK-47. These were conflict diamonds. De Beers faced a PR nightmare that a diamond is forever couldn't fix. The gilded truth was that the industry's supply chain was so opaque that no one could prove a stone hadn't been mined at the end of a gun barrel. The industry responded with the Kimberley process, a certification scheme designed to guarantee a stone's origin. But as any investigative journalist will tell you, the Kimberley process is a gilded filter. It tracks diamonds from the border, not from the mine. A blood-red stone can become clean with a single signature and a bribe. While the industry fought the blood scandal, an even greater threat was being cooked in a lab. For decades, De Beers had told the public that diamonds were a miracle of nature that took 1 billion years to grow. But in the late 90s, the truth changed. Scientists perfected the ability to grow a diamond in a machine in just 2 weeks. Not a fake diamond, not a cubic zirconia, a 100% pure, carbon atom for atom diamond. De Beers was terrified. If a machine could produce a perfect stone for a fraction of the cost, their entire scarcity myth would evaporate like steam. This wasn't just a competitor, it was a gilded executioner. The cartel's response, a desperate, multi-million-dollar campaign to label lab-grown diamonds as synthetic or imitation. They were trying to protect a $0 rock by attacking the very laws of physics. But the machine was already running. And as we enter the final part of this documentary, the forever lie is about to meet its expiration date. Up next, the collapse of the myth. The ultimate test of any gilded truth is the exit strategy. If diamonds are a forever investment, then their value should hold. But walk into a pawn shop or a secondary wholesaler with a ring you bought yesterday for $10,000, and you will learn the most expensive lesson of your life. They will offer you $1,500, maybe $2,000 if you're lucky. Why? Because the market price you see in the mall is a fiction. It includes a 100% to 300% retail markup, a massive marketing tax, and the De Beers premium. The second you walk out of that store, the magic evaporates, leaving only a common piece of carbon that no one in the industry actually wants to buy back. They have enough diamonds, they don't need yours. In 2018, De Beers did the unthinkable. After decades of calling lab-grown diamonds fake, they launched their own lab-grown brand called Lightbox. But this wasn't an admission of defeat, it was a tactical strike. By pricing their lab diamonds at a flat, low rate, they are trying to devalue the technology. They are telling the public, lab diamonds are cheap toys for birthdays and teenagers. Mined diamonds are for real love. It is a psychological Hail Mary to protect their multi-billion-dollar mining infrastructure. They are trying to gild the dirt while poisoning the well of the future. But the gilded truth is that the spell is breaking. For the first time in a century, the Madison Avenue brainwash is failing. Younger generations see through the 2-month salary rule. They see the environmental cost of the open pit mines. They see the absurdity of a scarcity that requires a global cartel to maintain. In 2026, the diamond is no longer a mandatory requirement. It is a choice. And for many, the choice is to stop participating in the world's most successful psychological operation. The forever myth is finally meeting its expiration date. We are told that a diamond represents love because it is unbreakable. But the truth is that the only thing unbreakable is the marketing machine that sold it to us. We have spent a century worshipping a rock because a group of men in a London boardroom told us it was our duty. The diamond isn't a scam because it's fake. It's a scam because it's a mirror. It reflects our own desire for status, our fear of inadequacy, and our willingness to believe a beautiful lie. The diamond lie is over. Now, the only question is, what will they try to sell us next? Subscribe to stay uncorrupted.